You're listening to Big Blend Radio's English Connection Show with Glynn Burrows, owner of Norfolk Tours. Welcome, everyone. So, June is National Rivers Month. And so, of course, we're going to go outside the country and discover England's rivers and riverways with Glynn Burrows. As you know, he is the owner of Norfolk Tours in England. And he's talked about rivers on the shows before and in his articles. And his article is up now. You can check it out in the episode notes. And what's cool about this article is we've also got a jigsaw puzzle. So if you want to listen or watch this, you can do a jigsaw puzzle at the same time. Isn't that cool?
That's very cool.
It's the Iron Bridge.
Wow, yeah, that is gorgeous.
Isn't it? Gorgeous
Did you get
Gorge.
That?
Gorgeous Gorge. Is it Gorgeous George or is that Curious George?
Bit of both.
Oh my gosh, we're already off and running, Glynn.
Oh, there we go.
I know it's good. But anyway, the rivers part, I think we've talked about waterways before and, like the Norfolk Broads, which are not women. See, we're really off and running. So, but when you look at that, you've got all these little tributaries and then you've got the Thames, right? Is that the big river of England?
I think the Thames is the longest river in England. I wouldn't swear to that, but I think it is. But no, there's lots of really big rivers. In fact, last week I was away with two visitors and we went across the Severn estuary, which is the big river that splits England and Wales, the estuary that comes up at the Severn. And that was a massive wide estuary. And I believe that the Severn has got the biggest tidal drop in the country. And when we went over the bridge, you could see the massive mud bank. So you could see how much the river had dropped, from when it comes in to when it goes out. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of big rivers, The Avon is quite a big river, which is, Stratford-upon-Avon. We went there as well.
Nice.
But the Severn is a big estuary. You've got the Wash that has the Ouse coming into it, lots of other rivers as well. But the Ouse at King's Lynn is a very, very big river as well. So you've got lots of big rivers. Well, we're an island with a small mountain range running up the middle of it. So obviously there's lots of water running out from mountains down to the sea. And in Scotland, obviously you got more mountains, and in Wales you got more mountains. So there's a lot of small rivers that join together to make bigger rivers, and then they go out to the sea. Wow. So yeah, we're fortunate.
Because you've talked a lot about the coastal walking paths in England and Wales. And you've got amazing hiking paths that like the Roman roads and like Pedder's Way and, all of these Hadrian's Wall. That's that's up a little bit. That's in Wales, right? Hadrian's Wall.
Scotland.
Oh, I'm going to get in so much trouble just now. Yeah. Everyone's going to yell at me. Stop it. Leave me be. But what you see, this is a problem when you haven't done them, right? You're never going to remember 100% if you haven't actually been there. It's like trying to pronounce anything, it's as you go there, it's hard. We've talked a lot about these walking paths, but what about walking on river? Like, do you have riverfront walkways in the cities? Like in London, I know all my friends who love London, their thing is they need to go and walk along the river.
Yeah, I mean, most towns now will have a path that walks along the side of the rivers. You get the best of both. You're walking in a town centre, but you're getting the best view of the river. In fact, again, going back to this last week that I've had two ladies over from California, we walked all the way along, not all the way along the Avon, but from the church in Stratford-upon-Avon where Shakespeare's buried, all the way up back to the car park where we were parked. And that whole journey was all up by the river. So it's a beautiful walk. I just love water. It's just so calming. And it was a bit cooler because, this last week in England's been really hot. So you get slightly cooler air off a river. And, it was just a lovely, gentle walk. And as we're walking beside a river, you're not going up and down hill because a river is generally relatively flat. Nice. So we were getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the view of the Royal Shakespeare Company Theatre, the church where Shakespeare's buried, and we were getting the river. What more do you want?
Well, I want to get on a boat on the river.
Well, you can do that as well. The one behind me is a sailboat on the Broads, the Norfolk Broads. The Avon, there was a lovely little motor cruiser going up and down there, so you can have a go on that. In Cambridge, as you see on the pictures that I put in my article, you can have a go on a punt, which are normally punted by students, and they give you a rundown of what you're going by, because you're going by the backs of the university, and that's actually
Oh,
called backs. It's called the back because you're seeing the back of the university. And the student has got this great big pole like that, and he pushes it down, and he pushes this punt all the way along
mm,
as you're going along the river. That's a lovely one.
nice. That is
Fantastic.
nice. Now, what is this? You mentioned in your article something called wherry. Wherry?
Yes.
What is this?
Wherry is particular to the Norfolk Broads. It's a really big sailing vessel, and the Norfolk Broads are not very deep. They're only about 8 foot deep. So they had to design a special boat to carry the goods from like places like Norwich out to the coast at Great Yarmouth along the river. And they designed this. It was a very flat bottomed sailing boat, and it's called a wherry. That's what they used to cart or everything from the middle of Norfolk out to the coast to get on a big boat to go all around the world. Or things that came in, they then put them on a wherry and brought them up into Norwich. But now they use wherries as great big holiday making boats. So you can hire a wherry to, have your wedding on. You can have a wedding on a wherry. You can have your party on a wherry.
I want a wedding on a wherry.
A
Yeah,
wedding on a
that's
wherry, that sounds very good, doesn't it?
yeah, it
A
does. And if you
a wherry wedding,
and if you change your mind, there's always overboard.
you can push them over, can't
Exactly.
you? Yeah.
You splash. Well, okay, so with the wherry, can people sleep on them, or are those long boats?
You can sleep on a wherry, but you obviously need the crew to take charge of the wherry. If you want to have a boating holiday, you can have one of these little motor cruisers, which are, can be anything from 6 people right the way up to 10, 10, 15
Mm.
people. And they are motor cruisers, but you can sleep, cook, everything on them. Caravan on water. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I think I've sent it to you before. There is a little Mr. Whippy boat on the
That's
Broad.
right, the Mr. Whippy boat. That's it. That's
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
Yes, and
You can buy an ice cream.
everybody, the Mr. Whippy boat. Yeah, Mr. Whippies are ice cream cones, soft serve with a 99-cent flake in it. I don't think they're 99 cents anymore.
Probably not.
But I remember it for 99 cents extra. Pence, not cents,
10.
pence.
Yeah,
You'd get a chocolate flake bar in there.
chocolate flake. Yeah.
There's nothing like a chocolate flake. It's
Well, I know
nothing
they're
like it.
completely different.
They in your mouth. They
Oh, they
are
do.
absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want one now. See?
I was going to say, I can see that you really want a Mr. Whippy with a flake.
Well, you're going to have to wait, everyone, until August for when Glynn comes back in August because he's talking desserts of England. And I think Mr. Whippy gets to be part of that, doesn't he?
Well,
Oh, come on.
I'll have to see what I can do.
We can have him after pizza.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, we're
sure.
back to that again.
I'll tell you, my ladies who were over had marmalade on their bacon, would you believe?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I do believe that. That sounds delicious.
No.
Oh, Glenn, see, I know it's never ending. Every time we talk, we find something that we're not going to agree on. And
Oh,
this is
yeah.
one, marmalade and bacon. Well, you know that I like bacon cheeseburgers with peanut butter and pickles. It's an Elvis burger without the bananas. He would have bananas on it, but I don't eat
Okay.
bananas unless
No.
they're in banana bread, which is good. Banana bread is good. Do you eat banana bread?
I'll let you keep that. No, I don't like banana bread. Just eat scones.
My, okay. All right, but you can pack a good picnic on a boat and
Oh,
enjoy like a
we
river.
always do that. Funnily enough, when I was little, my parents always used to take me and my sister and my grandparents out on a boat, and we had a picnic. And now we've got grandchildren, we take them out on a picnic boat as well, because it's just lovely. You hire a little motor cruiser on the Broads, and you can just drive down the Broads as long as you like, and have a picnic, and then drive back, and it's just lovely. You see all the birds, you see in the water. You can have a Mr. Whippy off the Mr. Whippy boat. It's just just perfect.
So what was Hyacinth Bouquet? I know we've talked about the one episode where if you anybody watches the Keeping Up Appearances, find it on BritBox probably. Hyacinth Bouquet goes out with her husband and family doing the boating thing, and of course ends up over into the water. But what was this canal thing? Like the canals were opening, closing. Where was that filmed, do you think, in England?
Well, it's mainly in the Midlands where they had lots of canals because the rivers in the Midlands didn't go where they want them to go.
Excuse us.
Yeah, excuse us. So what they did is they actually dug canals. So they dug man-made rivers, basically. These canals crisscross the middle of England. So they, especially around Birmingham, because
Okay.
Birmingham was the city that really shot up in Victorian times in the 19th century. And these canal barges
Mhm.
were really long, but they're actually called long, narrow boots. They're called narrow boots because they're long and narrow. And they were what they transported lots of heavy goods like
Mm.
coal and stuff like that, which was very heavy. They transported that from the places where they dug the coal out in the Midlands to places like Birmingham or Manchester or wherever, and they were transported in these narrowboats. So the narrowboats were originally just pulled along by horses, and beside the river, beside the canal, there would be a path where the horse would walk with a piece of rope
Mm.
pulling the narrowboat, because you know as well as I do that as soon as you've got something moving on water, it doesn't actually take a lot to keep it moving. A horse would pull a massive narrowboat full of coal, and then they would pull this narrowboat all the way from A to B. And what you were talking about were the locks, because obviously, if you're going up and down a hill, a river wouldn't normally do that. Just go along and
Right.
then down a waterfall. You can't do that with a boat, so you dig the canal and then you put in a lock. So it's like a big water container. If you can think of a big square
Mhm.
box full of water. So you open one side of the big square box and you come in with your boat at that end, and then you let the water out until it gets to the level of the river at the bottom, and then you can undo the gate at the bottom and the boat can go out. So you've got
Wow.
steps. We went down a really big series of canal locks when we were in Canada. There was a
Oh
whole
yeah.
series of them. You know, if you got a steep hill, you need to have a whole series of locks to allow your
Okay.
canal boat to go down the locks.
Well,
And
thank
now,
you for this engineering lesson here.
oh
This is
yes, oh,
great.
so now, instead of transporting coal, we have these great big narrow boats that are now like a caravan on the river,
Wow.
on the canals. So you can
Wow.
have a holiday on the canal.
This idea.
You have to do the locks yourself, so that's a bit of work.
That's where you get in trouble, like Hyacinth.
You
Well, I like the idea of floating and then getting off at different places. Now, can that
yes.
happen? Where
Oh
you tie
yes.
up your boat, you've had a picnic, maybe go down a little bit, and there's a
Yeah.
village that you can go to the pub or something like that, or
The only thing you have to be aware of, obviously, is water and alcohol do not mix very
sure.
well.
No.
You have to be careful. Don't fall in because you're going to drown, you know. And every year we have accidents where people fall in rivers drunk and
Sound
drown.
like here. I mean, it happens because we're
But
humans.
the one good thing is that when you're on a river, you see a place that you know really well, but from a different angle. Because
Exactly.
when you drive by in a boat or when you walk down the high street, you see one bit, but when you're on a river, you're seeing a completely different view of the same place. And also you're gonna get to places that you can't get to by car because
Exactly.
the river is just going through the countryside. So if you tie up somewhere in the middle of nowhere, then you're going to be literally in the middle of nowhere, and it is really lovely.
Mm.
I'm mentioning the Broads a lot because I know the Broads really well, but there are some fantastic walks in these reserves where
Hmm.
they don't have any cars, they don't have
Nice.
any vehicles at all. They just get people visiting by boat.
Wow.
So the birds are obviously quite happy because they're not getting surrounded by millions of people. And, the people who are looking at the birds see birds that they wouldn't normally see.
I
Yes.
like this. And the birds, and like when we've kayaked and canoed, the birds seem to kind of look at you like, all right, you're part of us. It's a whole
Yes.
different You're
Yeah.
just kind of, if you're gentle and calm and not being, one of those
Yes.
people on the
And on a river, you're not going fast.
Mm-mm.
Generally speaking, most rivers have a speed limit of about 5 miles an hour.
Nice.
You're not zooming down like a motorboat.
Right.
You're going along gently, and all you hear, if you're on a sailboat like the one behind me, all you hear is the water running beside the boat, and it's just
Mhm.
beautiful.
So when, like, this is going to be a silly question, but I'm thinking of people wanting, no, you know me. So when people, I'm thinking of those who want to do something like this as
Yeah,
part of their English vacation is, get on a boat, maybe do an overnight kind of thing,
yeah.
or day trip. What about bathroom facilities on boats? I know people, this is a question, I know
Oh,
ladies want to know.
they
Um,
have them.
they,
The little tiny boats don't have a toilet on. If you've got a boat for 6 people, there isn't a toilet on it, but you're traveling along the river and there's always somewhere to pull up. Not like a service station, but there's a pub or
yeah.
something along there.
Well, that's
And
a good excuse to go to the pub.
exactly. But, the bigger boats, like the one behind me, that will have a toilet on board, and any of the big holiday boats will have everything on that you need, a toilet, a shower,
Mhm.
kitchen, everything. So
Ah.
you haven't got to worry about toilets,
Mm.
generally speaking.
Now, what happens in London with the Thames? I mean, that's a big deal for people to experience. Is there any
Yeah, and
unique other than walking down it that people can do to experience the river? Aren't there like dinner cruises and
there's
things like that?
everything like that. In fact, our children bought Diane and I a lovely trip down the river on a boat. So we went all the way from the Houses of Parliament, right in the middle of
Mhm.
London, right the way down to the O2 Arena at Greenwich, which is where the O2 Arena is.
Okay.
And then we came off the boat and we had to go on a chairlift all the way across the Thames. So there are boat trips. There are you can have a boat trip that is also like a nightclub. There's boat trips that you can go either direction, so you can go down to Greenwich or you can go the other way up towards can't think where, but the other end of London, so you can go up that way. There's everything you want to do.
Now, okay, so what about in the holiday season? Because when you say holidays, that's vacation, y'all, for Americans. But then the holiday season, you think about Christmas and New Year's and things like that. In this country, like if even on the ocean and rivers, depending on the communities, sometimes they dress up their boats. It's like they do that with golf carts here. If there's golf carts,
Oh, really?
for Christmas, they'll have a golf
Yeah,
cart
yeah,
parade. But we
yeah.
have boat parades here and they dress them up with holiday lights and things like that. Do you do that in England at all, or is it too cold to do that?
They would do it in London. I haven't seen it here, but I've got no doubt at all that they will do things like that. I mean, I know on the Broads again, they do like a Mississippi boat. They've got like a big
Oh, the
Mississippi,
paddle boat. Yeah.
yeah, like that, yeah. And they do everything that you want to do. Again, you can hire it for your wedding if you want. So they do Christmas events on that as well. So yes, they do dress boats up. But
Mm.
generally speaking, a lot of the boating that goes on the smaller rivers are just people like you and I who love boating, who love bird watching, who just want to get out in nature. We are so fortunate in England that we've got so many small rivers.
That's nice. I mean, just to go walking, I know I've been on many of them and fallen in them. Because as a kid thinking you can walk on these little pebbly things, and
Yeah,
Nancy
yeah,
going, "You're gonna fall." No, I'm not.
yeah,
Splash.
yeah.
But the waterways are. I mean, because you have swans and things, which is
Yeah.
amazing, and kingfishers and all
One
of these.
behind you, the swan.
Yeah.
Swan over
See, oh,
your
there he
shoulder.
is. Yes, look at that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
we have
think it's.
loads of
Oh,
swans, loads of swans.
it's
And
just
different types of
magical.
ducks. Yeah, I mean, the waterfowl is just lovely because, as you
Mm.
said, you're going along in a boat very quietly and very gently, and the birds actually take very little notice of you because they just see you floating along and they just don't get frightened. So you see so much more in a boat. You really do.
I want to do this. I want to go
Yeah.
float. Yeah. And I think the
Boating.
parades now, do you do like fireworks and things like that for New Year's over rivers, like the River Thames? Do
Um,
they do that?
Yeah, the New Year is always over the Thames in London. It always is
Okay.
because the big wheel is
Yeah.
beside the river in London, and that's always a focal point.
Okay. Now, what happens on bonfire night? Do they do more kabooms?
I don't think they do. I mean, they might do,
It's
but
really more bonfire than
it's
ex
yeah, it's more fires in smaller communities for Guy Fawkes Night,
yeah.
and yeah, I mean the big one on the Thames is always New Year.
Okay, that's the
And
thing.
then Sydney, isn't it? Sydney
Mm,
Bridge is the one for Australia. You know,
that's
that's a
huge. That's
yeah,
internationally renowned for it.
exactly, and that's by the river as well. You see, isn't it?
Yeah,
The rivers are a focal point
they
because
are.
90 going at history again, just in case you hadn't realised I'm a historian, but the whole
An
reason
engineer,
most settlements that we've got grew up is because of the rivers.
right?
The
It
whole
is.
reason London is where it is because it's on the river and it had easy access to transport. Because years ago, again, before we had trains, the
Mhm.
best way of getting about was by boat.
Yeah,
Because again, as I was saying about horses, you don't need a lot of power to pull a heavy load by a boat. You
exactly.
do if you're pulling it by cart, especially over a rough road. So most things were transported by river.
Okay, speaking of history, did any, because I always find this fascinating because sometimes rivers separated a battle and sometimes rivers were the setting of a battle or a skirmish. Has that happened in England? Has to, because like, I mean,
Well,
in ancient times.
the reason that happened is because rivers were more often than not a boundary. Because whenever you're going to have a boundary of some sort,
Hmm.
you use what is already in the landscape. So, excuse me, 99% of rivers also form boundaries. So, if you've got a boundary between two areas, that's
Mm.
going to be where you're going to have your problems. In fact, I always say that Norfolk is actually an island. I'd like it to be an island. I'd like it to be independent. That's not going to
Oh
happen
dear.
because actually we're surrounded by water. All of Norfolk is surrounded by water. We've got a river running all along the south, all along the west,
That's
and then the
nice.
coast is along the north and the east. So we're surrounded by water because the river is the boundary between
Hmm.
Norfolk, Suffolk, and Norfolk and Cambridgeshire. So
Nice though.
always water. Water is
Water.
really, really important.
And in England too, I mean, here we've got a lot of initiatives and well, it's a little different over time, but a lot of organizations are working to keep the rivers clean. And environmentally, some of those laws are changing, but it doesn't mean the
Yeah.
organizations won't stop. So to keep the waterways clean because it all connects to the ocean, it all connects. So
Yep.
is England doing any of that kind of work too to preserve your water and keep the waterways clean from pollution,
Very
from
much.
all of
Yep.
that kind of stuff?
Very much so. The Rivers Authority is always testing the waters, and most towns now don't put anything that is untreated into the rivers. So
Mhm.
you won't, I mean, years ago, a lot of rivers were open sewers
Yeah,
because
exactly.
everybody threw everything into the river.
Took a glass of water and said, "Here."
And then a little bit further up, that's where they got their drinking water from.
Yeah.
But, I think we've realized now that that's not a very good idea. And also, rivers, like you say, go into the ocean. So whatever we put in the river is going to end up in the ocean. So we are very careful now. We
Mm.
really are. I mean, as you can see, the river behind you is a gorgeous,
Hmm.
gorgeous. That's actually a chalk stream because that goes through chalk, that particular river. So you've got a beautiful, clear river that really is a
Oh,
beautiful,
wow.
clear river. And then the one
Wow.
behind me is the Broads. So that's a little bit more muddy because they've got a lot of reeds. They've got a lot of trees overhanging.
It's got peat too.
Well, exactly. So you've got a
Mhm.
lot more sort of mud
Mm.
in the bottom of that, but the one behind you is a chalk stream, so
Mm.
that is as clear as a bell.
So is this because you've got chalk that was being, that people mined? Because I just did an interview with Scott Kendall as a travel writer. He's going to be on the second Friday in July, and he went champagne tasting all through Champagne, France. And he
Right.
was like these really historic, I think Clicquot and Mum. I can't pronounce anything over there, but we tried. But he went to all these very historic champagne houses, which, by the way, two of the most prominent ones were women who did this, by the way. Anyway, they're mostly on chalk. Like the
Yeah.
vineyards, you might be able, with climate change, to start, making champagne.
Well, we already have in England.
Yeah, it's
So that,
amazing, isn't it?
yeah, there's no reason why not.
That's
We've
another
had
reason
vineyards.
for us to come over.
Yeah, that's a bit of a hook, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, hey, there's wine in England. Let's go and try it.
Got
Don't
we've got
import it, just
local
go get
vineyards.
it.
We've
Yeah.
got local vineyards and we've got local breweries, so you're never ending. And lots
Ah.
of cider, lots of cider.
Ooh, speaking of rivers and, the nature part of it, which is important. And actually here, because of breweries, actually support clean initiatives through like the Audubon Society for birding and riverways. A lot of breweries do fundraising specifically to keep waterways clean because beer is water, just a
Yep.
little twisted and happy twists. And then you've got to think about all the birds that rely on this water. So what
Yeah.
is the fishing like setup? I have no idea about fishing, but for our listeners that may want to go, hey, let's get on a boat, go fishing. Is that
Yeah.
something that happens in England? And if so, what are you eating? We're back to food, Glynn.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, fishermen are always, I mean, again, any river you go to, obviously, fishing, you have to get permission. You also have to have a license in England to fish, but they're very easy to get. So that's not a problem. And the fish in rivers, we get lots of rainbow trout. Certain rivers, we have a lot of salmon, but generally speaking, we have a lot of pike and any other sort of river fish. We get a lot of them. And the Broads is really popular with fishermen, as are most of the rivers. I mean, when I was little, we used to go fishing in either in ponds or in rivers. Because it's just a bit of fun, not for the fish probably. So I don't want to upset anybody, but fishing is one of the biggest hobbies in the countryside.
Okay, well, that's good to know for people
And
that
that
they
was
want to
thought
do that.
if anyone wanted to come and do some fishing, I could sort that quite easily. I've got all the right connections.
Awesome. And yeah, I think the permit thing, we have that here too. You've
Yeah,
got to have permits and so and there's a limit for certain things that you're fishing
yeah,
for.
yeah.
So it's all good stuff so that they're still there the next day you want to go fishing.
Exactly. If everybody came along and took everything, there'd be nothing left. So, it's all
Exactly.
very sensible, very controlled, but also, people do it, they enjoy it. Well, that's.
Recreation. My final question on rivers is a different one because you're talking about history. And what about through the years? I mean, there's all the procession kind of thing that goes around the royal family, right? And there used to be the carriages, right? The fancy carriages. Now, are there fancy royal boats in
Yeah.
England?
Didn't you see the one, I think it was the one of the Jubilees when the Queen went up and down the river in this great big boat?
No, I
Yeah, I'm
missed
sure
it.
that was there. I'm sure that
Oh,
was the Jubilee. It weren't a very nice day, if I remember rightly, but it was one of the Jubilees. I don't know that there is a boat that is specifically kept to one side, but I
oh,
know that the Queen went on this boat up and down the river at some point. I think it must have been her Platinum Jubilee. So
mm,
that would have been February 22. Yeah, so it wouldn't have been a nice day because that would have been in February. So it would have been sometime around then. But yeah, I mean, the royals do use the river, but not as much as they use carriages.
mm,
Definitely not. And I
mm.
don't know if they've got a royal boat. I don't think they have.
Well, they what about the QE2? But that's for the sea.
Well, yeah, and they used to have the Royal Yacht Britannia, which is now moored up in Edinburgh. So if you want to
Oh,
see the Royal Yacht, which is absolutely spectacular, as you can imagine, that is in Edinburgh and
oh.
well worth a visit to have a look round. And one thing that I didn't put in my article, and we haven't spoken about, is wild swimming.
Oh, wait a
It,
minute. Oh, is that naked? Are we getting
no,
naked?
no, 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 don't make it.
I said naked because I'm in the States, but
Yeah, but
there.
yeah, it's not naked because, you wouldn't wanna get in English water naked. You
I
not
don't think so.
a lot
No.
of people do wild swimming in a wetsuit, but also a lot of people do wild swimming in a swimming costume, so it is basically naked. But they do a lot of wild swimming in England. You wouldn't catch me wild swimming, but
Wild swimming is you're just jumping off a boat and into a river or
you just swim in a river or in a
okay.
lake. Yeah. I mean, Diane and I were in Scotland in November, and there were about 20 people who went swimming in one of the great big lakes or the lochs where we were
Brr.
in.
No, did they had to have wetsuits on, right?
No, no,
No, no.
they had bathing costumes on, and they came out and wrapped themselves in a towel, but I'm surprised they
But
survived.
there's this whole thing where people are jumping into freezing water, jumping into a sauna, and all of that stuff. It's supposed to be healthy.
That's what
But,
they say.
I agree with getting out of our comfort zones, but there's a line. I have a boundary. And when it's anything to do with cold, you
Each to
know,
his own.
I will watch.
Yeah, we did, watched, and we
I'll
thought, "You're
cheer
mad."
them on,
Yeah.
and who jump into cold frozen water. They
Oh, yeah, they do. They actually make a hole, don't they, and then jump
yeah,
in it.
far
Welcome.
better skin than I do, so I'm
Well, they're
going something
mad.
has to be
They're
right.
they're they're just mad.
I love this. Well, I this has been a fun chat talking about rivers. I feel like I want to go on one. I love the big paddle boats.
Yeah.
That's my thing,
Yeah, I do like to have a go in a canoe or whatever they call I don't know whether I'm right by saying a canoe or there's another word. I
Kayak.
do love them. A kayak, that's right. I do love,
Kayaks.
but they're
Canoes are
very,
long and skinny.
yeah,
So they're long and skinny, and then kayaks are a little bit wider.
yeah, well,
They're
that
kind of
must
like
be
a
a
banana
kayak
boat.
because I'm a little bit wider, so I probably need the wider one.
I need a kayak.
The trouble is now when you get to my age, it's really difficult to get out.
Yes, that happens. And then, sometimes Nancy's like, can you go look at that and see if that fell under the couch? You have to get down on your hands and knees. That's the worst. The
Yeah.
knees don't want to do that. Like,
No,
no,
no, no.
no,
Getting
no.
down is all right, but it's getting up again. That's the problem.
Yeah, yeah. But even getting on a boat, you're always like, because there's that wobbly part. You're always,
Yeah, yeah.
what's going on? And yeah, it's
But it's lovely.
it's worth every bit of it.
love going on the water. Going on the
Mm,
water is one of the best things.
it is. I'm ready. I want a picnic. I want to go in the water. And what I want to do is what you were talking about, where you can go out into nature
Yeah,
and get away from cars and then stop at like the nature preserves and be in the
yeah.
nature part and just have your little sandwiches, maybe a little champagne because you're on a chalk river. I
Well,
don't know.
just remember to take all your rubbish home with you.
I think that's important. That is always
That's
important.
very important.
Very
Take,
much so.
what do they say? Take
Ac-
only photos and leave only footprints.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's Chief Seattle wrote that.
Oh, is that right? I think that's a very good thing to say.
Mm-hmm. So take only memories. Yeah, something like that. It was Seattle, I think, or we have that over here somewhere. I'll have to look
Good.
it up. No, I think this is wonderful. Well, everyone, again, the link is in the episode notes, so you can go do the puzzle. And also, you can go to norfolk-tours.co.uk to keep up with Glynn, and he can help you go on a river vacation. River
Yeah.
cruising in England sounds good to me.
Yeah, sound good
Well,
to me.
happy summer, Glynn. It's officially summer.
Yes, it is. Yeah, in fact, only the other day I was at Stonehenge, and that is
Ooh,
where they have the big summer solstice thing, and they reckon there
nice.
were thousands of people there on Midsummer's Day. We went there just afterwards,
Yeah.
and it was absolutely crowded. But they said the weekend before was really, really packed. So,
What would you say to do, like, because that is something a lot of people, it's on their list
yeah,
of when you go to England is to go
yeah.
to Stonehenge. Is it always packed? Because wasn't it closed for a bit, getting some work done or something?
It may well have been because they're always making sure that everything is okay. But yeah, I mean, it is a must visit place. But there's always lots of people because it's a must visit place.
Yeah, it's like going to the
So,
Taj Mahal. Yeah, you're always
yeah,
going to have people.
the trouble is that it's always going to have people, and you're always going to have every nationality you can imagine. I was there, like I say, what day was I there? I don't know what the days are. I was there this week anyway, and there was every nationality you could imagine.
Awesome.
I was talking to a bloke from what used to be Yugoslavia. Obviously, lots of
Hmm.
Americans, Japanese, and Polish. There were two ladies from Austria. I was talking to some people from Switzerland.
That's
So
awesome.
everywhere. And yeah, that is, and it is lovely. And in fact, the two ladies who were with me,
Hmm.
were very lucky because they actually got photos of Stonehenge. And they said they waited until the people who were walking around it got behind the stones so they could get
Smart.
pictures without people in it. So they were thrilled.
Well, you see, like in Moab, Arch Rock is like an iconic photo here in the States in the
Yeah.
national parks, and they actually you have to make like reservations to do it,
Yeah.
which is interesting. So very fun,
Worth,
very fun.
worth going.
Awesome, awesome. Well, listen, everyone, again, norfolk-tours.co.uk. Now you got a tip for how to photograph Stonehenge. It
Yep.
was fun, Glynn, as always.
Always good to chat with you. Get on a river.
Can't wait for next time. Next time we're going to be talking villages, right? And then
Yep.
after that, we're going to talk dessert. So lots going on.
Lots and lots of lovely desserts.
Thanks, Glynn.
See you later.
Thank you for joining us for Big Blend Radio's English Connection show with Glynn Burrows, owner of Norfolk Tours. If you're planning a vacation to England or looking up your family history in England, visit norfolk-tours.co.uk to connect with Glynn. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.